warm welcome to you all. Hope you'll thoroughly enjoy our programme.
Oh, hello.
It's the Real Britannia podcast, a very British podcast about very British movies with just a hint of professionalism. Good morning, Scott here. At the end of a soon-to-be forgotten Skype line, we're reaching the end of its tenure, is Stephen and Mark. Hello.
Hey.
Are we mourning the loss of Skype?
Well, considering that it's trying to push us towards Teams, then yes, but we found an alternative, thankfully, because everything is better than Teams.
Yeah. I mean, I use it at work. I've had no real problems, but Mark made me laugh because he just said earlier it's like a seance. You know, is there any?
It is. Bow to the gods of internet connections. And
we have an alternative lined up, so hopefully things will still work. Otherwise, we're going to have to do this by post, lads. I'm not too sure.
Answers on a postcard.
Answers on a postcard. Stephen, your choice this week. Is this in retaliation for Girly?
Partially, because I'm just one of those idiots who thinks, oh, I know, I can do something that has four people's names in it, and also happens to have a family member's name in it. Let's jump to something else that's a bit odd and off the mainstream. I thought I'd test the water with it, and we've been meaning to do it for quite a while. And why not do it with Mark, obviously, whose sensibilities are in the right place. So, yes, it just felt like the right time, really. All the different stars aligning. And here we are.
There we
were.
Basically, it was Hold My Pie, wasn't it? It was Hold My Pie.
A little bit of that, Matt. Yeah, must have been. Yeah, a little bit.
Yes, I see your Girly, and I raise you, the cook, the thief, his wife and her lover. Here's the trailer.
Here's your chance to improve your table conversation. Tell Michael you live in a big house and you spend £400 a week on clothes.
I spend £400 a week on clothes.
You eat in the best restaurants.
I eat in the best restaurants.
Georgina, try a little harder, please.
The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover, released in the UK 1989. I forgot it was an 80s movie when I watched this the other day. Directed by Peter Greenaway, starring the marvellous Michael Gambon, the equally marvellous Helen Mirren. And then when you go down this cast list, it's really incredible to think that you've got people like Kieran Hines, Tim Roth, Ron Cook's in there, Liz Smith, Alex Kingston playing a waitress. You've got Ian Jury. Honestly, Gary Olsen, they're all in it. Absolutely marvellous. Roger Lloyd Pack. Too many to talk about at the moment. We'll mention those in the Hall of Fame. Stephen, it's your choice. And literally, as we were talking 5 minutes ago, you've managed to knock up a synopsis for us, haven't you?
A brief one, yes.
A brief one.
Gluttonous gangster ruins restaurant while wife bonks book reader.
Are you working for the Sun or something?
How dare you?
That's all you need to know. That's it. That's fine.
Yeah, it's the use of bonk. That is 80s.
That is a very Sun headline. Isn't
It did occur to me that it was going to be quite 80s and tabloid, the word bunk.
Yeah. I mean, the only way it could be more 80s if it's romps with, right? That's the other one, isn't it? Romps with.
Yeah, phew, what a scorcher this movie is. So. Michael Gambon ain't my boyfriend. Spoilers. Stephen, tell us why.
Well, yeah, this film, absolutely, I think we needed to cover it at some point. It's from Peter Greenaway, who, as an author and artistic endeavour, certainly it's very painterly in a lot of ways, as well as theatrical. It's a beautiful piece with regards to how it visually assaults the senses in a number of ways. Some of it is just looking at the scene setting and the way it uses colour and basically the staging, but then also some of the absolute visceral violence and grotesque use, not just of violence, but what's in some way more sickening is the use of food to turn the stomach rather than turn on the stomach. And the actual acting is off the charts. Some of the finest performances of some of the actors in it, particularly Gambon. So it was certainly something I felt, we were going to come to at some point, but on the back of the previous film from Mark, it just felt like it fit with the four people and the member of the family link.
Yeah, and it's kind of got the same perverse kind of vibe, isn't it?
Yes.
In some respects, but this goes full on. This is full on.
This is.
I made the mistake of I sat down to this eating a pizza. That's a mistake. Do not do that. Do not eat food while you're watching this film.
Did you turn it off halfway because the wife came in as well? Is that what you said to me the other night?
Well, I'll go halfway through and then the wife turned up, so it's like, I better start watching this. Anyway, there's no way she'd be interested in watching it. It wasn't just because Helen Mirren was naked, but that was partly it, yeah. It's always the same, innit? You're watching something like, oh my God. I do the same to my kids. I always walk in and what are you watching? It's like, you would come in right now. It's all that.
You should have just said to her, I was just checking you'd still got a better body than Helen Mirren, and yeah, you have.
That's it. I mean, with this movie, there's probably no point in this movie where you wouldn't find a point that would offend somebody or upset somebody. This film starts off literally with a man being covered in dog shit. That sets the tone of where we're going to go from.
In fairness, the thing that upset me most was the constant choral singing. That's the one thing I don't like about this film. That just irritated me, But apart from that, that's the only thing that really turned my stomach.
You know what? I couldn't work out if I'd seen it before. I've definitely seen bits of it, but it's one of those films because it's so visual. I might have just seen some stills. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
But I know I've seen bits of it because I definitely remember certain scenes, but I didn't remember the entirety of it. Yeah. It might have been one of those things I taped off film 4. I watched a bit. This is a bit weird, and just fast forward, getting a vibe or something like that. But I was kind of familiar with it, but not to the point where I thought I've definitely seen this. It wasn't.
You like Peter Greenaway, don't you? You've seen.
I like his early stuff. I just stopped. There's one film I absolutely hate of his that he made after this, which is quite similar to this in look and feel in places. And it was one of those films I liked it, and then it got to a point where I just hated it. Something happened. I hate this film.
Yeah.
With a vengeance, and I've seen more modern films that have the same effect to me as well. But not this one's fine though.
Yeah, Stephen, we reviewed this ages ago on Stinking Paws. Must be 10 years ago.
Oh, if not longer, yeah. Certainly, it's something that I think I've only watched once since then. And you've got to really prepare yourself before watching it. To be fair, if you know what you're getting, then you go, right, well, I'm going to decide what night to do it. Make sure you're not eating when doing so, and settle in for the 2 hours and 4 minutes or whatever it is. And be mentally prepared for it. So yeah, it was a long time ago we watched it, and certainly, particularly having Charlie on there, there was quite a lot of a bit of artistic insight, but also some of the discussion about the gratuity of it, and some of the humour of that in some ways, because in some ways it's a bit cartoonish sometimes, or a bit over the top, but it all works in to the end that it has.
Yeah, Gambon is a bit of a pantomime villain in this, isn't he? He's very overblown, as you said, possibly his finest role, his finest acting performance. He's absolutely incredible in this. And what I noticed this time around, I mean, I watched it to death when it first came out, watched it 10 years ago with you for the Stinking Paws. This is the first time in about 10 years I've seen it. What I noticed this time, Gambon has probably 90% of the dialogue in this movie.
Yeah, it occurred to me his name Speaker is absolutely correct. He just talked. It had a touch of a Pinter about the whole thing to me. It could be a play. It would work as a play. Don't know how they'd stage some of it, but I sort of felt it was almost a play we were watching, right?
Well, you probably have some kind of revolving set, I would assume. Maybe a four-part revolving set might, and do it on each of the rooms, as it were, on a smaller scale. But no, the thing about the name Speaker absolutely occurred to me, that he never shuts up. And
it's all horrible, isn't it? Every single thing he says is just detestable, brutish, boorish nonsense.
Sorry, Nico.
He just drugs everything into the sewer. Any kind of conversation. It's interesting because I watched it in two parts, as we talked about. And the first half, I was like, I really don't like this film, because I couldn't relate to any of the characters. But it really lights up for me once the love affair develops. That brings the humanity and the engagement for me for this film. Not that I wasn't going to watch it all the way through. It was fascinating, but it was car crash. That first half just indicated this is going to be a massive car crash movie kind of thing, but it just got better and better. So that was great.
They just turn up the volume to 11, don't they? You when you think they can't surpass what you've just seen, it just notches up another level in the next scene, and then something else is said or done, or something is presented on the screen, and you think, bloody hell, Greenaway, you've gone there. Well done. It's amazing what you actually see on the screen. Just going back to the name Speaker, I saw something online. We need to talk about, I mean, I don't want to go too much into the hidden sort of meanings, but there's sort of comparisons to Thatcherism, which we might have to discuss at some point. And then somebody else is discussing a religious comparison, right? And they said that Speaker, as it's spelled S-P-I-C-A, apparently is the name of one of the brightest stars in the galaxy, right? This is very tenuous. Lucifer means the shining one, or morning star, or
bearer of light. Bearer, light bearer, yes.
So they see him as Satan, right? The wife and the lover walking around naked, unashamed, Adam and Eve, all that sort of stuff. I think the cook, they described as Jesus, because he's the one that washes the guy at the beginning, and all this sort of stuff, and you can read a million different things into this, the political, the religious, or you could watch it as a movie. You could watch this as just a great piece of cinema. That's how I watched it. I try not to go too deep into a movie like this, because you could go down so many rabbit holes. It'll end up spoiling it, But I think, Stephen, from our conversation previously 10 years ago, the whole political thing was quite sort of prominent and important for you, wasn't it, when you watched it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly coming at a tail end of what was the Thatcher era.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, things carried on. But yeah, the way it was about this uber capitalism, the disgusting level of avarice and consumption for consumption's sake. Certainly, that was an element that I think is recognised, that is part of the spirit of the age, or rejection of the spirit of the age. From Greenaway's point of view, a lot of it is also, doing that in a way that is stylistically looking at sort of Jacobean and the other artistic elements are in there, which is why there's the paintings on the walls and the sashes and stuff. But certainly, the way in which it has the workers in the kitchen and who are getting abused, and the power that is concentrated in Speaker, and the way that the refinement and education is reviled, and that all plays together. But like you say, it's just worthwhile as a film in itself without having to go into all these elements. I mean, I think that there's a number of films that we can cover from this time period, whether it doesn't have to be the Ken Loaches and Mike Leigh, it can be other films that still do point towards where society had already at that point started going, even compared to now. So yes, the political element, you could talk forever about trying to find threads where this means that and etc. But like you've said, you can watch it and just enjoy the artistry of it, because it's incredibly artistic. Is the film? It's very, as I said before, painterly, which is what I certainly this time round, trying to put aside any assessment of picking apart details and bringing extra meanings in, just trying to look at it as a visual feast. And the plot line is incredibly simple, really. I mean, it is, sort of a almost medieval Shakespearean plot line. So you don't need to bring all that rest into it. It's very simple. There's whether it's a prince or a kingpin or a dictator or whatever, and bullying those around them and abusing their nearest and dearest, and them actually then going behind their back and then sort of trying to get their own back. That's age old and incredibly simple, and that plot can be put into a single sentence almost of what this film's about. But the detail is obviously there, otherwise it won't be engaging for over 2 hours, which it is engaging for over 2 hours.
Definitely. It is a complex film. Interesting. I've talked about it could be a play. There's really only it's almost a one location film, but it's not, because of the book repository, right? There's just 2 locations, but they look quite similar as well.
Is there a hospital as well?
Oh yeah, that's very brief.
It is very briefly, yeah.
The kid, is it in the hospital? I can't remember. Yeah, it's the kid. There is that too. It's, and also we see characters from those dislocations all turn up at the climax. Nurses from the hospital and everyone. So that's kind of interesting. It is a complex film, though. It's, some films are very simple. They're milkshakes, right? This is a rich, fine red wine, right? You can enjoy it for a quick drink, or you can revel in it. You can sniff it. You can, or whatever whatever you need to do.
Talking of sniffing, you can smell it at some point.
Yeah.
Absolutely smell this movie.
I'm sure a few people became vegetarians after watching this. What I was interested in watching this time is how I can see how it's influenced other filmmakers. It's like, wow, this reminds me of this. A lot of early Lars von Trier, and I'm not a fan of Lars von Trier, but really strong. I was thinking of things like Dogville or Mandalay, right? More recently, I mentioned a film that I just turned off. Something happened, I just hated it after that. And that was an Aronofsky film called Mother with Jennifer. Reminds me of this. Okay. So again, was Aronofsky influenced by Greenaway here, or some of Greenaway's?
But it is a prime example of what cinema can do bloody well, and it's cinema at its best. But as you also said, there's an element of a stage play to it, because at the beginning you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit at the beginning and have to run with it throughout this movie. And once you've got that in your head, you're there, you're captured. And it's just the colour palette and the way the costumes change, reflecting on the different rooms as you go through.
Yeah, and some great, I've got to mention, there's some great touches there that they did need to do. For example, when the bathroom's white, the main area is red. There's a point where the speaker, I think, comes through into the bathroom, opens the walks in, and you can see the room kind of lit up red from the other room. They didn't need to do things like that, but they did.
I think where Helen Mirren and the lover walk through the kitchen and it turns green.
Green,
as well.
yes.
And I'm colourblind and I spotted that.
I'll tell you, the one room that I thought, oh God, this must have stunk, was the room where the lovers were in with the game birds, hanging game birds. And I said, oh my God, that must have stank, that room.
Yeah, imagine that world when you're in the back of the van.
You don't really want to be
on the back of the van.
having sex amongst dozens and dozens of animal carcasses, do you? I mean, we're not again anyway. But yeah, but the back of the vans where that was just, you could see how stomach churning that was meant to be, with the because they'd been there since the beginning of the film, which obviously through the title cards we can see it happens over a week. That those things had just been left, and even when the police turning up to try to break into them because it's a public health hazard.
So they're being there.
Well, they get brought right at the beginning by speaker because he thinks he's the best at everything. So he thinks he'll bring the best ingredients he can get, and then that's when Richard says that he picks his own ingredients, so he knows it is the best, and there's that sort of bit of a power thing between them. And he decides
cutlery as well, doesn't he?
Yeah,
cutlery,
and he says he's leaving. I think he says something about leaving it there, so he'll have to accept it rather than taking it away again. Because if he takes it away, I think the unsaid thing is if he basically takes it away, it shows he's lost the argument. Whereas if he leaves it there and it's rotting and forces him to actually take it in because it's rotting on the doorstep, which he doesn't do. So it's I think a bit of passive aggressive, not so passive.
The cook's sort of place in this film is really interesting because he's basically untouchable, isn't he? No one messes with him. So he's the real power here. He puts up with all this stuff, but in the end, the cook is the one in charge. Never talked about. It's just implicit, right? So if you went back to religious or iconography, who's that? Is it God? Is it something beyond that? Is it the universe? I don't know, man. It was fascinating in many ways.
I think we need to take a wee break here because Stephen has very kindly, as always, collated the Village Hall of Fame for us this week. There's quite a cast list, as I sort of hinted at the beginning. Let's get your keys, Stephen, and take a walk up the path. Village Hall of Fame, where we induct anybody that's appeared on the podcast 3 times. How much of a challenge was it this week, mate? It's quite a big cast, really. It
was a long cast, but a lot of the people in it, I think a third to a half of them have only been in this. I read something somewhere that a lot of the extras were either from the local hospital or something, so a lot of them hadn't been involved in anything else, so that helped in a way, because it was clicking on them saying they'd done one film and gone, right, that's it, and this is the one film.
In the end credits, there's an acknowledgement. As I watched, because I quite like the music, I was watching the end credits. There's an acknowledgement where he thanks all the extras in the restaurant and the hospital for putting up with the process.
Oh, that's good.
Which is interesting, right?
Yeah. It was mammoth in the sense of quite a lot of people in it, but when it turns out it's quite sparse, to be perfectly honest, because we've got 5 people making their second appearances
Okay.
So Kieran Hines was in Excalibur. Diane Langton was in Carry On Teacher. Gary Olson, who died tragically young, was in Party Party.
Of course he was.
Oh, great, yeah.
Willie Ross, who was very distinctive look, he was in Rita, Sue and Bob too, which is a different type of film to this in some ways. And Liz Smith, she was in Private Function.
Brilliant.
Again, playing a dotty old woman.
Brilliant.
Which I think she seems to have done throughout her entire career. So that's people making their second appearances. And then we've got one person making their fourth appearance, which is Helen Mirren.
Of course.
She was in Excalibur, Last Orders, and Long Good Friday. Strange the Excalibur connection, because there's certain costume choices in this which are going more sort of early medieval, where there's the sort of the head scarfing around the face and the pointy hats and things, which are very much sort of 12th and 13th century, but also reminiscent of a number of the outfits worn when she was playing Morgana in Excalibur. So
very banqueting scenes, isn't it? And it's
that's
right.
It, yeah.
Is it John Paul Gaultier was the designer, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I have to say, he's always, I've seen his work in other films. Fifth Element, he was famously did.
Yeah.
That was kind of striking. And that's similar elements. The women's outfits are always really good. The men's, some are great and some are just a bit silly. It sort of depends. And I'm not talking about just this film. I'm trying to think. He's done other stuff. I think he did he did do the costume time in the TV version of Dune, which again is quite striking.
Oh, okay.
But he's done another film and I can't remember what it is. I find his style quite interesting. I always liked him. He's on British TV.
Here we go, guys. City of Lost Children. He did.
Lost Children,
that's striking. Yeah.
If you haven't seen this one, I urge you to see it. The Skin I Live In.
I haven't seen that.
I
think I have seen it. Yes, I've seen it.
Brilliant film, the Pedro Almodovar movie. Yeah.
While we're talking about the costume choices, it was just a humorous little aside from me that Gambon, if you go back and look, there's certainly a couple of scenes, maybe not all of them, but there's a couple of scenes I noticed that he had his tie on and it was extremely long. It was like down past his navel and almost down to the bottom of his crotch, which is obviously quite topical at the moment with a despotic and egregious dictatorial leader over the other side of the Atlantic.
Who's never wrong?
Who's never wrong about anything. Yeah. So it was a genius, and he's more qualified for everything than anybody else is. So yes, that was something that taught in. But as far as the cast goes, it's noting really, obviously Gambon, who's an absolute stellar performance in this, and also a great heavyweight in British cinema when he was around. And this is the first time, obviously, we've had him involved, which is worth noting. I should say Alex Kingston, we noticed, but yeah, Gambon for the first. And to be perfectly honest, just on as far as Gambon, he wasn't actually the first choice for who was going to play this. You probably read that Greenaway named the characters after the actors he wanted to play them. And
Albert Finney,
and Albert Finney was who he wanted for the role.
That would have worked.
It would have worked, but Michael Gambon was they're going to be the lover instead.
Well, in that case, who was Georgina then for Helen Mirren?
Georgina was going to be Georgina Hale.
Oh, brilliant! Can you imagine that, Georgina Hale?
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
Greenaway talking to who did what's the sorry, Ollie Reed, Georgina Howe, The Devils. Who directed that? I forgot.
Ken Russell.
That's Greenaway talking to being influenced, I think, by Ken Russell, maybe.
She was involved in Ken Russell's stuff. Yeah, so yes. And when she wasn't doing it, then Helen Mirren wasn't the next choice. There was actually, in between Georgina Hale and Helen Mirren, there was Vanessa Redgrave. Yeah, the only person who was in place right from the start is playing the Richard, playing the cook. So the rest all interchangeable. Also notable, obviously, as far as names, Tim Roth. As you've mentioned, there's a few others as well that were in there that Ian Jury and etc.
Yeah,
But,
there's a lot of alumni from British comedy shows, isn't it? I saw three people from Fools and Horses. Roger Lloyd Diane Langton. And there's a guy, I can't remember his name, but he played that episode where Dale Boy's in the hospital and Robbie Meadows is the doctor, right? He was in this as one of the less thuggish minions.
Ewan Stewart.
That's it.
Ewan Stewart. Yeah. Yes, he was in it. You mentioned Diane Langton, passed away a fortnight ago, bless her. Massive career. If you look at her obituaries that sort of came out last week before, I know her as Junie from Only Fools and Horses. She's like one of Dell's old flames and Rodney's going out of her daughter. It's that episode. But she was a massive star of the West End musicals. If you look at the stuff she did and Broadway, it's incredible. I mean, I think recently, which I've never seen it, she was in Hollyoaks for years and years and years, which I didn't even know. But that woman was just more than a sitcom actress. Honestly, she had such a career when you go back and have a look at it.
Yeah, and Stephen mentioned she was in Carry On Teacher. She must have been a kid.
She was a school kid in it. Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a career. How long back did that go? You know, that was 50, whatever, was it? 58, 59? Teacher?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. So it's absolutely, I mean, there's lots of people in this film, and there's various faces you think, oh, is that? And then you think, no, it's not. But as you say, there's quite a few people that we have seen in other things, and it does run the full gamut from, people who are in Only Fools and Horses to, people who are in some other film that we, there's a bit more cult following or stuff that's mainstream. It's amazing where people went from this film, basically. Certainly Gambon and Tim Moff and Helen Mirren, luminaries of the British acting fraternity.
So Helen Mirren with 4 is the top of the list this week.
Yeah. There's nobody else with any more appearances than Helen Mirren at the moment in this.
Alan Howard, who plays the lover, never seen him in anything, since or whatever. Turns out he was the voice of the Ring in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
In the animated one, wasn't it?
Is it animated? Oh, it's not.
I think it's from the 1970s animated one, if I remember correctly.
No, he's the voice of the Ring in the Fellowship of the Ring 2000.
Oh, right.
And the other two, Return of the King, all of them, yeah.
It says here he's more a stage actor, RSC stage actor. I'll tell you, I think I texted to you, Scott. This guy's got the best agent ever.
What a great bit of negotiation that man did for him.
It's £10,000 a week. That's all I can afford,
He probably retired soon after this because he couldn't, could never match that role, could he? Absolutely never top that.
He was good though. I think he was good as the bookish, putting up with this lout, being mildly abused by his loutishness.
Watching on the periphery, don't you?
He's not intimidated, is he? That's the thing.
No, because even before he starts the affair, Gambon sort of goes up to him and throws his book to the floor and just, generally just sort of intimidates him because he's just different. He's sitting there on his own quietly, not being part of the spectacle and the grandeur of what's going on around him.
I think that's you can argue deeper down there's an intimidation felt by Gambon because this is somebody he's holding court as Gambon's character speaker in there, and basically there's nobody in the restaurant that can have their meal without being fully aware that he's there and him basically interrupting their meals. And the only person in the room whose attention he hasn't got is him reading his books. And then also he's obviously threatened by the fact that is a cultural thing. He's not a reader. He's not interested in reading. As you said, it gives him indigestion, just reading. And probably some way knowing also that his wife is a reader herself. He wants to try and bully this guy to make sure that he asserts his dominance over somebody who he does in some way feel a bit threatened by.
Exactly, without trying, basically, isn't he? I'm just checking. Do we know if Ian Jury appeared in anything else?
What, films?
Yeah.
What, you mean ones we've seen or just generally?
No, just, is there any chance of him getting into the Hall of Fame?
I think it wasn't
in Jubilee, was he in? You might be right there. Mark, I'm just thinking things like Jubilee and
okay.
I don't know, was he in the Great Rock and Roll Swindle or something like that as well,
There's
maybe.
nothing there. Right, okay. It was in the Polanski movie Pirates, played a character called Meat Hook. The Raggedy Rawny, which is the Bob Hoskins, I think, directed as well as starred in from 88. Cook the Thief. There's no real chance. I mean, we're not going to be doing Judge Dredd, are we? The Stallone version, are we? Because he's a character called Geiger in that.
Definitely not, no.
No, not in Real Britannia, no.
No. So, yeah, so
With-
probably the only appearance. We might do the Raggedy Rawny if we're going to be completist with the Bob Hoskins stuff. But I didn't think it was too bad in this. You know, the few lines that he had and the part he played, he came across okay, didn't he? You know, he played Ian Jury pretty much, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Israel's got a load of charisma in it to spare, so it comes out for that. Though he wasn't a great actor, it was kind of, presence, so that's kind of cool.
And Alex Kingston playing one of the waitresses, so I'm assuming this is very early in her career before, wasn't it Mole Flanders or something she hit the big time with on the TV before Doctor Who, way before Doctor Who.
That's when she first got a break, as it were.
Must have been
I
this
think.
time, though, wasn't it?
No, I think it's a little bit after this, but only by 3 or 4 years. I think, if I'm judging it right. But I think that was early 90s. Was Mole Flanders. But no, as far as her career, I think she's definitely not done a lot before the this. I can't think of anything else she did, to be perfectly honest, before this.
3 episodes of Grange Hill.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Then played another schoolgirl in The Wildcats of St Trinians.
Right.
Cook the Thief is a main movie appearance, and then a couple of soldiers, Crocodile Shoe. She was in the bill.
Yeah.
A couple of things like that. Mole Flanders, 1996. There we go.
Yeah, that
Right.
sounds about right. She was definitely became prominent then, and then obviously Doctor. I saw her a couple of years ago playing Prospero in The Tempest to the RSC. She was fantastic.
Ooh, she
was fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Just to go back to Ian Jury, I just noticed his filmography. He actually did a film with Jodorowsky called The Rainbow Thief. Now, Jodorowsky and Greenaway feel like they're in the same space. If you watch Santa Sangre, say,
Didn't Jodorowsky try to film a June originally?
Yes, he
wasn't
did. Yeah.
June,
His
wasn't
films are amazing, and Santa Sangre does remind me of this film.
There you
There's
go.
similar elements, and it came before this film. So,
Who do we think has been influenced by Greenaway in this? Are we talking? What's his face that did Grand Budapest Hotel?
Wes Anderson.
It was one of the Andersons, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Where-
Aronofsky. I'm certain of it.
Legal Gentlemen.
Yeah, well, yeah.
They're
I think I
self-confessed.
agree.
They're self-confessed. I haven't actually watched it, but I saw. I was looking at some stuff to do with Inside Number 9 and League of Gentlemen stuff before, and one of the videos on YouTube that I didn't get around to watching, but it was a BFI thing where Steve Pemberton, I think it was talking about. It was a snippet where he was talking about how this had influenced them.
It's going to be fascinating actually to see what the kind of the tolerance level is as the film goes on, really, and whether
it is. It's a very strong flavour, and especially the first few minutes. Once you're over that, it's it's an assault on the senses. It's such a visually powerful film, and it's quite rare. As an adult going to the cinema, as a kid, lots of films are ingrained on my brain. But as an adult, there's not that many that have had such a massive impact on me as this had.
So this was released in 1989. And obviously, it's Peter Greenaway.
Yeah.
Can you remember where you were when you first saw it?
Well, yeah, I saw it in a rep cinema because I only moved to London in 1990 because I was at Bretton Hall with my colleagues Rhys and Mark, who are in here tonight. And so I moved to London in 1990. It was one of the first films I went to the cinema to see. And I saw it at the Riverside Studios Rep Cinema on my own. Again, that's often the most... You connect, I think, when you see a film on your own, you connect with it much more personally and powerfully. And I'd seen a review on Film 72, or whatever it was called then, with Barry Norman, and he was raving about it. And it absolutely blew me away. I just walked out of the cinema and I just couldn't really comprehend what I'd seen. I just thought it was wonderful.
And at that time, do you remember, had you seen any of Greenaway's other films, or was that the first time you'd seen one?
I think I may have seen Maybe a bit of Drowning by Numbers, Z and Two Noughts, but they're very ponderous. They sort of alienate you quite deliberately. I think they're quite narratively quite challenging. I'd seen a Draftsman's Contract, which I'd really enjoyed, but this is the first. I think this is the most accessible of Greenaway's films, in that it's dealing with a sort of classic revenge tragedy. Really, it's like almost Jacobean in its structure, and also it's a sort of gangland film as well. So it's quite a sort of it's quite an easy story to get into, and quite a simple story, and the title says it all: The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover.
At the time, a lot was made about the fact that it was an indictment of Thatcher's Britain, in the sense that the cook, who is sort of all-consuming greed sort of personified, and his sort of violent assault on those around him and so forth. Do you remember seeing it in that way, or was it actually just very much at face value you watched the film?
No, I do think that there was very much at the time in that sort of, there was a lot of anger, a lot of anti-Thatcher anger, and it did feel like a film very much of its time. I remember there was Ploughman's Lunch was out around that time as well, and it was certainly an indictment of greed and a sort of, in Albert Speaker, played by Malcolm Gambon, you've got one of the great scream monsters, I think, of all time. He is the most despicable character, and there was something about his performance which and I think is the real heart of why it affected me so much as a film. Interestingly, Peter Greenaway named the characters in the film after the actors he wanted to play them. So Albert was, he'd written it for Albert Finney. And Georgina, played by Helen Mirren, he'd written for Georgina Hale. And Michael, who is the lover, played by Alan Howard, was written for Michael Gambon. So the only one of the four who actually was meant to be in the film, in his head, was Richard Boringer, who plays the cook. And but I wonder what kind of film it would have been. I mean, I absolutely love Albert Finney, but Michael Gambon, for me, is the performance of a lifetime in this film. It really is extraordinary.
I mean, it's as well as having those great performances, and obviously, Helen Mirren and Michael Gambon, great kind of Shakespearean actors of the sort of real theatre tradition, and so he's working with with the greats. But actually, in terms of how it looks and the other kind of collaborators on the film, it's quite an achievement, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you've just got these wonderful costumes designed by Jean-Paul Gaultier. You've got the Michael Nyman music. Nyman had done a piece called Memorial, which he'd written, I think, for the victims of the Heysel Stadium. And there's a sequence at the end where this entire sort of 12, 13-minute piece of music is used in full. It's the most extraordinary sequence. And they've got the art direction and everything about it. And the food was designed by Locatelli.
Yep.
So every frame, I mean, obviously Peter Greenaway's very much interested in art, the art of cinema, and every frame is just beautiful, so you're in for a treat.
It's interesting, in America the film was quite heavily cut because it had to get a sort of unrated kind of adult content certificate rather than the sort of the X certificate, which at that time was really just for porn only, pretty much. I mean, in terms of certification and what people sort of should and shouldn't be seen. I mean, do you think there are sort of limits to what people should be allowed to watch?
Well, certainly in terms of this film, it is, like I say, it's a very, very strong in terms of its violence and the way it gets under your skin. But no, I don't. I think it's someone's choice to, if you know what the content is before you go and it's got a certain rating, then you should be prepared for that. But this is also a very visually beautiful film. It's not sort of inciting. I mean, it's of course an assault on all your senses, and it does make you feel physically queasy at times. But that's what he was trying to achieve. So other times it's absolutely visually beautiful. The camera sort of has these sort of long panning shots which move from the outside of the restaurant through the kitchens into the restaurant through into the toilet. And as the characters move through these different sections, their costumes change colour and stuff like that. So you can't accuse this film of being ill thought through or exploitative in that respect. Everything has been very well thought out.
And you touched on the Draftsman's Contract earlier, and that's a film that actually as with many other sort of films, in The League of Gentlemen and actually obviously in Psychoville and so forth, you've sent up films or you've kind of lovingly pastiched them, if you like. But Draftsman's Contract, I think, appears in League of Gentlemen Apocalypse. Isn't that sort of the King's Evil?
The King's Evil? Well, yeah, we were touching on all kinds of things in that Draftsman's Contract, certainly those wonderful kind of wigs and that beautiful lighting, and also bits of Bella Lebet with the, we had the arms coming out holding the torches. You know, we're very eclectic with the League of Gentlemen. We're sort of film and magpies. We'll draw from everything. We'll draw from Ken Loach, we'll draw from Mike Leigh, we'll draw from Peter Greenaway, all great, you know, idiosyncratic British directors, and we will use anything that we can get our hands on that tickles us.
But the macabre is definitely, the sort of the darker material is definitely something that seems to appeal to you as a kind of collective.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, that'll be. As I'm sure when people see this film, it'll be no surprise that I've chosen it as one of my favourites, and the fact that, you know, Mark and Reese are here as well tonight. We used to quote the film all the time. There's, you know, all the characters, very distinctive sort of voices and accents, and so we used to do Michael Gambon impressions, Richard Boringer impressions, Alan Howard impressions.
I'm tempted to ask you to share them with us, but I'm guessing if people haven't seen the film yet, maybe that's probably not going to work.
Georgina! No, I think you've got to see it. And, you know, as with any quotes between friends, it's the most obscure things that you pick up on. But yeah, it's just, it's a delight to be able to come here and see it on the big screen, because it's sadly not that available anymore.
You're listening to the Real Britannia podcast, a very British podcast about very British movies, with just a hint of professionalism.
I don't think it was a direct influence, but I think Lynch kind of sometimes does Greenaway kind of stuff in his later films, to the extent that the recent Twin Peaks The Return, Tim Roth's character in that is really similar to his character in this film. You know, a thuggish sort of henchman.
I like the scene in this where Gambon's talking to Roth and telling him not to be sick because he's eaten too much or too rich food or whatever it may be, and or he's drunk too much, because he looks pissed actually.
Yeah.
He's like, don't you dare be sick. He's going, oh, and then Tim Roth just throws up. Basically.
Yeah. And the prairie oyster scene.
The prairie
oyster. Which I think
yeah.
a smoking gun. I thought, oh my God, he's going to eat someone's bollocks or something. But it didn't happen. He does say it's metaphorical. What does that mean? All that, you know.
I mean, although this could offend a lot of people on so many different levels, it's difficult to turn away from this. You are captivated, aren't you? It's grotesqueness at its most artful, isn't it, this movie?
Yeah, I think the setup scene does it all, right? A bloke being covered in dog shit, but not just that. You're watching him and he's naked with all these yapping dogs about him, which is a really uncomfortable thing to watch, because you never know quite what a dog's going to do, right?
And those dogs do start fighting for real at one point. Did you notice?
I was feeling bad for the actor. I've got to be honest.
It all sets it up as far as speak of how vile he is, because you know, he's turning up trying to impose his will on the restaurant, and it's the start of his takeover of it. Really, he's been vile, and you know, obviously that's part of his criminal endeavours and protection money and punishing somebody for not paying up and etc. He's been vile to his wife at the same time and bullying to her. And then he's massively racist to the Chinese lady. So he sort of covers all the bases. As about, I mean, I think apart from, you know, later on, he's been homophobic, but otherwise he's covering all the bases of being offensive. Really,
there's this wonderful line. I might actually play the clip rather than read it out. The line, there's this marvelous line. It says, "What you got to realise is the clever cook puts unlikely things together, like duck and orange, like pineapple and ham. It's called artistry. You know, I'm an artist, the way I combine my business and my pleasure. Money's my business, eating's my pleasure, and Georgie's my pleasure too. Though in a more private kind of way than stuffing the mouth and feeding the sewers, though the pleasures are related because the naughty bits and the dirty bits are so close together that it just goes to show how eating and sex are related. Georgie's naughty bits are nicely related, aren't they, Georgie?"
It's so terrible. But it's a very memorable little monologue, isn't it, that one?
The music, Mark, you hinted at this. The music, I don't think it would be the same film, as you said, without that music. The Michael Nyman music is just incredible.
Yeah, it's really good. You weren't so much of fans, were you, Stephen? So, but yeah, I really liked it. And they use it to similar effect in his next film with the Baby and Matt on, which is the one that I really hate. and stop me watching Greenaway films until it gets to a point where it's just it's a very similar. There's sopranos being used and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought the music, everything about it is a visual and a sort of oral feast, apart from the shouty, horrible bloke at the centre of it, right?
I can see why we chose it, or you chose it again, Stephen, because I was overdue a watch of this. By the sound of it, Mark, it's your first watch.
I think so. You know what I mean? I can't be sure, but I think it is my first proper sit-down.
I think if you'd have watched this, you'd have remembered, to be honest. You know, it attacks the senses, this film. I mean, I watched it knowing I'd seen it 4 or 5, 6 times previously on Friday night. And even then, I'm still spotting stuff and just mouth open, agog, some of these scenes still. It still has the power, all these years and all these viewings later, to upset, disturb, to enthrall, it's a wondrous piece of cinema. Completely different, I think, to anything we've reviewed so far on this podcast. I can't think of anything similar to this yet.
It's as I say, it's very painterly, it's very engaging in that sense, because it's a beautiful thing to watch despite the stomach churning elements in various ways. So I think it's something that draws you in, almost like a beautiful car crash happening in front of your eyes. And I think that's one of the elements of it. It's been done for the sake of art, in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
that's certainly Greenaway. I think at one point recollection, I think it was him who said that painting was more important than cinema, and if he had to give up one or the other, then he'd give up cinema. But then painting has had millennia to develop, whereas cinema is still in its infancy and only about 100 years old. So I think this is showing how cinema can be art as well, but it doesn't stop it from being just a story that can be just enjoyed without getting into all the rest of it.
Greenaway is one of the high points of British cinema in some respects, right? I mean, if you go back to the back, it's like The Archers, right?
Yeah.
Then it's Ken Russell, and then it's Greenaway. That's about. It depends where you put Hitchcock, because Hitchcock made American films, so it's a bit different and more mainstream. But Hitchcock had some interesting visual stuff. But in terms of pure vision, The Archers, Ken Russell, Greenaway is kind of. I see those as like the three peaks.
It's like a progression, isn't it?
Yeah. Let me tell you, I wrote a review of this yesterday, and I think sums it up for me, which is, if you watch this movie, it will live rent-free in your head for a few days, and certain scenes in it will live in your head rent-free forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it will be images, because you forget the music, you forget the dialogue, it's the images. Right.
Let's leave it at that. Again, we've always said, if a film still crops up in the back of your head days or weeks later, just suddenly, something will flash in your brain about watching this movie. That movie's done its job, and it's done it bloody well. And I think over the next week or so, guys, we're just going to keep having flashbacks to this. And
you'll see it watching other films. That's the thing. Watching this for the first, I think it was the first time, I was seeing like, oh my God, that reminds me of Polanski's Macbeth. That reminds me of Santa Sangre. It just kept backwards and forwards in time. It's like, oh, that looks like a film that was made 20 years after.
Though, is it, mate? It's
no.
It's not stealing anything. It's unique in its own way.
Yeah. It's as unique as Jodorowsky or Lynch. It's a Russell. It's great.
Stephen, you got anything to add?
No, I think between us, we've covered it all. This is certainly a film that not for everybody. But anybody who's interested in, not just interested in cinema, but interested in something a bit more artistic and stylistic, I suppose, and wants, that is still basically a very simple gangster plot. And this is something that is worth approaching, but approach it with a certain amount of preparation, not just in your mind, but also with making sure your bladder's all right, because you've got 2 hours.
Yeah, don't eat, we say, during the movie. Don't do any snacks.
Yeah.
Not pizza.
Okay, that's The Cook, The Thief, His Wife and Her Lover, 1989. By my calculations, it's my turn to choose the next movie. Let's take a break. We'll be back after this. Stephen, I want to say thank you for bringing that to the table. I think if anybody watched this movie without seeing it before, probably won't thank you. It will upset a few people, but at the same time, it's a piece of cinema magic, as we say, and I think it deserves to be seen by as many people as possible. So thank you for The Cook, the Thief today, mate.
I just want to say something I already mentioned about it, which is I watched it in two halves. The first half, when I watched it, I ended with thinking, that's a really good film. I really appreciate it, but I don't like it necessarily. I don't like anyone in it. But the second half totally turned that 180 for me. There's definitely people you empathise with and you understand, and it gives it a richness, that turnaround. So bear with it. If you're watching this, I'd suggest bear with it, because you will start to actually engage emotionally much more strongly, not just disgust, or anything like that, or revulsion. There's way more to it in the second half.
Yeah, and thank you for the Hall of Fame. A little bit easier this time round. Mark, thank you, my friend, for being here. Do you want to have a quick shout out to The Good, the Bad and the Odd?
Oh, yeah, The Good, the Bad and the Odd. It's my podcast. Sam and I, my co-host and oldest son, Sam, we talk about movies each week, different ones. We're doing a Disney watch through at the minute. We're going to be doing Dumbo. I'm recording Dumbo later today, in fact. Oh, cool. Though, I don't know, with the release schedules, but we're still going to... It might have been out months by the time you listen. I don't know.
And you've got a new project as well, mate,
I've got a new project called Telepathic. Get this. Mad About Telly, right? So we cover one episode of TV per show, but we are kind of Star Trek obsessed. And I'm co-hosting that with Gary. My friend Gary, where I am significantly older than him, so that's one of their perspectives, is a generational difference. But Star Trek's our main jam at the minute, but we will be doing all sorts of other episodic shit. I'm going to drag him into watching things like The Prisoner and things like that eventually. Yeah. Well, one episode.
Oh, good, yeah.
It's all one episode of this and one episode of that. So yeah, Telepathic, and it's got its own feed as well. So, and he wanted to do it on Spotify, which I've never even touched. So I'm leaving that to him. So we got a Spotify feed as well for that one.
I think we're on Spotify. Real Britannia is on Spotify.
Yeah, I think I was, but oh god, oh man, I just can't keep up with everything. All the. I'm sounding like old man shouting at a cloud, but
Yeah, well, we're not bemoaning the loss of Skype, as we say.
No, we're not worried about that.
Lads, thank you so much. I'll see you all very soon in a few weeks' time. Take care.
Bye.
Take care.
A positive shower. Bon voyage. Good luck. Thank you.
The British end up, sir.